Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Terumais Pedig Dalit Halach Zayin. We're learning today Daf Mem Beis. We left off on Daf Mem Beis Amid Aleph Mamish on top of the Amid. And we're going to start today by learning a case where even though we learned in the Mishnah that the problem of Ein Mevatlin Isa Lechatchila is only when we're being Marbe Beheter. But in the case of our Mishnah, where in order to create a real 100-to-1 ratio without knowing which one is which, when the Truma fig was black and you have, let's say, 50 white Chulin figs, so how those 50 white figs join to the 50 black to create the 100? Because you are able, like we learned Bar Pedoya, because you are able to be toichene to matir. And as we explained, even though ein mevatlan is a lechatchila, but bamed varam amurim, when you're being marbe beheter. But when you're just mixing things together, then you are allowed to be mevatel iser lechatchila. The first case that we will have in the Gemara today will be an exception to that. That there will be a scenario where even when you're not being marbe beheter, as we'll learn, we will still apply the rule that ein mevatlin iser lechatchila. That will just be the beginning. Now, we're going to, early in today's daf, we're going to go back to the case that we had on daf Mem Aleph Amid Beis, so let us review it. There, it wasn't about black and white. Let's make everything white, just as an example. Just Trumar Chulin. You had 20, that was the case, 20 Chulin figs, into which fell one Truma fig. You don't have the ratio of 100-to-1, so far so simple, meduma. But then, va'avda achas mehen, one of those 21 figs fell out, and now, based on that which we will learn, that when do we need to have the ratio of 100-to-1? Only when you have vaday truma. But when you have safek truma, then it's batal beroiv. So that Shulakish holds, since one fell out of the 21, a suffix doesn't have to mean 50-50. There's a doubt. Maybe the one that fell out was the truma, even if it's the chance of 1 in 21. So what? So now it's a suffix issue. So you can say that since it's a suffix issue, there's no more meduma, because you have, you have roiv chulin. You began with 20 chulin, only one of truma. Rabbi Yochanan says that kulam nasu hoicheyach, and as we interpreted those words, B'lashon Habavli, is chazek isura. Since when the one truma fell in, halacha paskind meduma, you can't revert that halacha simply because when fell out. But we gave examples, 2 examples where even according to Rabbi Yochanan, going forward, if then something else happened, just as one of the 2 examples. So now you have this 20 meduma l'Rabbi Yochanan. If now another 21 chulin figs fall in, and just to make it clear, the total is 40, right? Or 41. You never have the ratio of 100-to-1. Doesn't matter. If 21 chulin figs fall in, we do consider the current 20 to be doubt, because there is a doubt, because one fell out. And now, even l'Rabbi Yochanan, it will become batal. And we're going to expand more on that. Furthermore, what we're going to also do today is that we're going to go to one of the other 2 cases that we had in the Mishnah. Don't forget that Rabbi Yeshua gave 3 examples. Not just Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Akiva. It wasn't only about black and white. It was a large and small and round and circular. So we're going to go back to the case of large and small, and we're going to add a nuance that we didn't yet have when we learned it in the Mishnah. We're going to learn more about this in the Gemara. The Gemara is going to bring a braisa that will have a whole different version of that which we learned in our Mishnah. What did we learn in our Mishnah? The Mishnah made a contrast, that in the case, lamashal of black and white, Rabbi Yeshua was the one that was lenient, batal, remember, because you could toichen, mater. And Rabbi Eliezer says, what are you talking about? One black, you have 50 white. The 50 white doesn't combine to the 50 black, right? Rabbi Eliezer was machmir. But then, ironically, the Mishnah says you have a similar case, but not the same, in which they reverse opinions. And that case was, if you have these big barrels and you're pressing figs into the barrels, and you pressed 1 litra in the mouth on the top of one of the barrels of Truma by mistake. And now you don't even know where that is. Now, Vadai, if you have 101 barrels in total, and you have 100 barrels that for sure have no Truma, and only 1 barrel has Truma in its mouth, that's the classic 100 to 1 bittul. Case of the Mishnah is you don't have 101 barrels. Nevertheless, here, Rabbi Eliezer was the lenient one. What did Rabbi Eliezer say? Rabbi Eliezer says, I don't need to have 100 barrels. All I need is to have the volume, counting also everything that's inside the barrel. Ubelashon HaMishnah, the tachtoinois. Don't only look at the pi hachavias. 1 litra. If you have a sum total, not only of the mouths, of everything in this barrel and the adjacent barrels, if you have 100 litra of chulin and you only have 1 litra of truma on the pi of a chavias, so then you have the 100 to 1. Tachtoinus malois esol yoinois, and Rabbi Yeshua was the one who's machmer. That is what we have.
Right, because it's a liquid, correct? I mean, in this
Not
case,
because it's a liquid, but because the way we learned, because you can argue both ways. You can argue that you can mix them easier.
Right?
Easier, you could. You don't have to grind them up for them to lose their color. And on the other hand, in the case of our Mishnah, is that where the black and white, they were already mixed together. Yes, you can see black and white, but they're already mixed. Here, the top and the bottom are separated. So there's 2 ways, you can, however, whatever the svara behind it is, the Gemara is going to tell us that everything we learned in the Mishnah only follows the Tana Rebbe Yehuda, that had in his tradition the machlek is the way we just quoted it, the way we have it in Halacha Zayin. But we're going to have a Braisa, we're going to have a Rebbe Meir that has a different version of all of these opinions, as we will see when we learn the Braisa inside. And the final topic of today, in a little daf that's not so little, is that we have to remember, and we'll repeat it again, but we have a Mishnah in Arla, and this is the ground zero, about rabbinic items that will never be nullified. And there's a very important machlekes Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim. The Chachamim enumerate in the Mishnah in Arla 6 items that are mamish chashiv, and those are never going to be nullified midrabanan, but all other items will be. And Rabbi Meir is a lot more lenient. Rabbi Meir holds that there are many things that could render an item into significant. One of them is items that are sold by number and not by estimation. Es shedarkoi limnois. The very fact that these items are sold by number, everyone counts. In Shitas Rav Meir, there's a machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Eish Lakish. Is it, remember, es shedarkoi limnois, or is it kol shedarkoi limnois? When does Rav Meir say that something chashuv is not batul? Is it only something that's exclusively sold by number, by item, individualized? Or does he say it by items that are generally sold by number, even though they're not only exclusively sold by numbers? There will be times that they will be sold by estimation. I'll give you a great example, an egg. It's a great example. Most of us, when we buy eggs, we buy them by number, a dozen eggs. That's called by number. But there are times then you buy a box of eggs. And how many eggs does a box? That's a good mashal of something. And that's a machloikis whether, since beroiv, generally it's sold by number, it's not batal. And we're going to see how all of that is going to be very relevant to our sugya. It's a loaded daf. Let's see how far we can get. I hope we can finish it. Daf Membeis, Amad Aleph, Chevra, all the way on the top. Okay, so again, as we mentioned, based on Bar Pedoyim, on Rabbi Yeshua, even though normally ein mevatlin isa lachatchila, Rabbi Yeshua's whole heter is based on the fact that you could be toichen umater. So we asked, you're not allowed to be mevatel isur, and we answered, no, you're not being marba anything. I'm not allowed to add more kosher to the treif to get the shishim, more meat to milk to get the shishim. I'm not adding any figs here. I'm just grinding them. Hold on, says the Gemara. Rab Shimon ben Lakish says in the name of Rab Hoshayam, one of the items that are chashuv, that are not batal, one of the items that are chashuv, that are not batal, are sealed casks of wine. Makes a lot of sense. We're not even talking about a bottle. We're talking about a cask, a barrel. I don't know how big these barrels used to be. I know that in 770 on Simchas Torah, when I was in yeshiva, they would have two barrels, a barrel of vodka and a barrel of pickles. And Vlad already explained to me, the pickles were not there for the pickles, but when you have pickles, it helps your stomach not get sick from the mashke. It wasn't about the pickles, but that's how it worked. That was a barrel. That barrel, if I remember, was as tall as I was. That was a barrel. I don't think it has to be so gross, but it can make sense. A sealed barrel is chashuv. A unsealed barrel is no longer chashuv. So what is this case? Ho yulufan of meva chamishim chaviyos. Chaviyos means the way the Marafulda writes. We're going to learn this with the Marafulda, top Marafulda. So tumais, you had 150 chulin barrels of wine. And then what happens is that one sealed truma wine got intermingled. You don't know which one is which. That's the vart. And even though what truma's bottle, right? 101. No, a davar chashuv is not bottle. That's it's rabbinic. It's all rabbinic, but that's one of the exceptions. So now you got yourself a problem. Now you have 150 miduma barrels. What happens if the barrels were unsealed? Vinis patchu meya, 100 were opened. So what do we say? Now, do you know?
Rabbi, can you just easily separate them? They're sealed, invisible.
Wait. You're jumping in the middle of the haircut. Look inside the manaful. Very good, very good. So 1 second. You had 150. Let's go with the numbers, Kevin. You had 149 chulin, right? And you have one truma. You have 150. Someone went ahead. We're not saying they did the right thing, but v'nispat chumeya, keep your finger in the Gemara, keep your finger in the Marafulda. Second line in the top Marafulda. V'nispat chumehen meya. Now shebatla chashivasan. Now v'oila hachavya shal truma be'echadu meya. Now, Kevin, to your point, the 50 sealed remain meduma. The 50 sealed remain meduma, but meya mutarais. The chamishim asurais. Look inside the Marafulda. Third line from the top. Meya mutarais magvia min oisam chavia shiyurei truma. Hold on. It's not like you can mamish drink 100. The rule is, remember, even when it's not meduma, you got to give away to the kohen one barrel. V'hashar mutar lishtoisan. Why? Let's read the words. The first narrow line in the Marafulda. Dimi manav shach. Im atruma b'toichan. If from the 100, unsealed, uncovered, you have the truma, hakol mutar. Why? Shebatla chashivasan shel chaviyas. Just for the record, guys, it doesn't mean 100. It must be that 101 were uncovered. So if in this 101, one is truma, okay, you got the ratio. If the truma is sealed, so it's for sure okay. So you had 150 and one. Just making it clear. It can't be 100. You had 150 chulin. You had one truma. Everything became gepaskent usher. Someone opened up 101 barrels. Those 101 are okay after you give one to the kohen. Vayte 9 lines from the top in the Marafulda. Chamisha masuros. And veloy tema, we don't say that truma beruba isa. What's the chiddush? Of course, the 50 are usher. You know, this is so good. You might think, now that we have the open and the closed, why don't we say truma's in the roiv? Where is the truma in the roiv? And therefore, v'gam hachamishim yehi mutarim. Kumash malon, no. The efsher lahatiran mitam zeh can be matter them. The imkain sarech ato lesser hameya she'enom batlam bohen. He says, if you're going to use that logic, then he's saying even the 100 cannot be mutter. I don't know why he says that, but that's what he says. No, so why don't you say that the barrel is not going to open ones? Because if you're going to say the barrel is in the open ones, vadai, Uh-huh.
Can't we go back to smicha and say because wet versus solid?
I'll tell you what happened. Again, I want to go back. I just got the numbers wrong. You had 150 with the truma, bediuk, and only 100 were opened. It's a big chiddush here. Only 100 were opened. That's why the Marav Fulda says you can't be mater the 50, because if you're going to use the logic that the truma is in the open ones, you don't have the ratio. The only reason why when 100 were open, you are allowed to consume all of the 100 after giving one of them away to a kohen is because you have the ratio of 149 against one. That's amazing. For people that are here, it was 62 degrees this morning. I put the heater on. It's slowly warming up over here.
Forgive me. Can you just repeat the last three sentences?
Yeah, that's very important. Exactly. You had 150 barrels that were sealed, including one of Truma. So you can say it should be bottled because you have 100 to 1. You have 149 to 1. No, because a davar chashuv will never become bottled. Someone opened up 100 barrels, not 101 barrels, 100 barrels. Every line is a chiddush. So first of all, we say that there's a bittul. Why is there a bittul? There's a bittul because you have a total of the ratio 100 to 1. You have 149 to 1. Barrels that are sealed, the truma barrel that's sealed should not be bottled. When you open up 100, we say that now maybe the truma was opened. You have to give one away, but it's bottled. So if we say, why don't we say that the truma was vadai in the opened? We're not saying vadai in the open. If the truma was vadai in the opened, then the 100 will be asur. You don't have the ratio. That's the suffix. You have a doubt. Suffix is batal b'roiv. You don't know in which one it's which. So that's why there is a bittul. The sealed remain asur. The open now are batal. Now here's the key. Now v'hasha'ad, the other ones, back in the Gemara, that lichashiyah paschu. If they will be open, they'll be mutter. If they'll be opened is you have to know proper Aramaic. Actually, you're saying not open them. Don't do that. If someone will open them, they'll become mutter. Which implies asur. Why
lichshi is not when. Lichshi is not if. Lichshi is when they're gonna open.
So I that's the way I would speak. I get that. You have to understand, I think it's not only digduk, it's how people express themselves. It's amazing. Rab Ze'era understood from this expression, in other words, he was being practical, like Yakir, the way I see it. No one is going to sit and lose 50 barrels of wine. But it's not a lechatchila they could think.
Why not just open it up?
When you ask a Rav, what's the din? The Rav will say, listen, if you'll open it up, the Rav already knows you're going to do it. I know you. When you'll open it up, but you shouldn't really do it. 1 second. Why not? Now there's a chiddush here. What's the chiddush over here? That's the problem. The whole thing of Bar Pedoya, the whole explanation of Rabbi Yeshua, let's use the words of Tosfos Yantiv, which is brought down in Shulchan Aruch, that when you are not being marbe beheter, mevatlen is lechatchila. That's the whole what we're getting at. Look inside the Marav Fulda. Lichashi patchu b'di'evet halachatchila loy she'ein mevatlen isun derabanan lechatchila. I'm saying isur derabanan because biblically it's batal b'roiv. We don't say sealed. The whole davar chashuv is a rabbinic. V'ho dematir li'el liois toichen shani hachem. The davar chashuv hu v'chamurin. It's amazing. In other words, it's not a carte blanche that whenever you're not being marbe beheter, you can be mavatal isa lechatchila. No, it depends. It depends. All of these rabbinic stringencies, this is not bottle, that's not bottle. It's not all on the same shelf. There are different levels of it. That's the whole point of Rab Ze'era. Now, how do you determine what's who and who is where? I don't know. At least we have over here. Well, we're not adding is equal. That's the whole point. We're not adding by the figs. We're not adding by the barrels. Yet by the figs, we're saying that you could lachatchila grind it up. By the figs, toichin matir. That was the bar padoy. Not if you will grind them, but because you are lachatchila allowed to do it. And opening up barrels, lachatchila, you're not allowed to do. Even though they worded it in a way, it's not such a big aved over here.
Right, exactly.
To Yakir's point.
Why not open it from the beginning?
Because ein mevatlan is a lachatchila.
But we're saying that's not okay.
And we're saying that, in other words, this stringency that a davar chashuv of a sealed barrel does not bottle is so strong that lachatchila you can't open them up. Even though de facto people would know one is going to sit and lose 50 barrels of wine. Wine was very expensive.
That be the reason why it's different? Because in this case, lechatchila isn't allowed. Like you're not allowed to do it lechatchila.
I know. No, I get it.
Yeah, but shouldn't that be the reason? Because here
Well, let me see what you're saying. Even Rabbi Yeshua will agree to the statement of Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish that you have 150 barrels. The one barrel, even Rabbi Yeshua will be more. There's not bottle. Why? What did Rabbi Yeshua say? Not bottle. Why don't you say that since if they'll be opened up, if all the 150 are open, it will be bottle. So why didn't you say it's already bottle? That's the point. Because by the white and the black figs, you're allowed to grind them up, lachatchila. Even though they're not ground yet, we view it the ratio. Even though if the barrels are going to be opened up, all of them will become, you have the ratio of 149 to 1. Since you're not allowed to do it, even Rabbi Yeshua will say that until when you do it, it's usher. Only one reason. Only one. Ein mevatlin isa lechatchila. That's the only reason.
Can you go for 1 second?
Yes, we have.
It's the 100 that are open. Why are we saying that that's okay?
That's amazing.
We
That's
have
another.
to 101.
That's the whole vart. Because based on what we learned, we're going to go back to on Daf Mem Aleph Amid Beis, that only Vadai Truma needs the ratio of 100 to 1. When you have 100 open and 50 closed, so what you have now is when you are judging, you're judging them separately. The moment I'm judging the 100, and I'm saying the 100 is mutter, the 50 is usr, I have maybe the one is in the other. Maybe the one, that's why the 50 is usr. That allows me not to need the ratio of 100 to 1. Why don't you say that vadai? We don't say that.
At what point can you take one out and give it to the kite?
After the Rav Paskin, the 50 is also, the 100 is mutter, but you have to give one to the coin. You take one and give it to the coin. And ironically, when you start opening up the 50, all you open it up and you drink it. Let's go weiter. This is great. I know these are big sugyas. Listen, Chavra, we're used to learning Gemara in the yeshiva. This would take a Amud with the Rishonim, and this is a big statements, but we have another 10 of these statements today. Weiter. Says the Gemara that, again, reminding ourselves what we learned in the case of the 20 chulin, 1 truma, of the achas mehen, says Rabbi Yochanan that his words are kulam nasu hoicheyach, schazik hisura. Says the Gemara on that, Rabbi Zeira b'shem Rabbi Pedoya, truma oiseres bevadoya b'meyan usfeika b'chamishim. What did we say? Aviv? We said that suffix truma is nullified in roiv. This is like a bomb statement. We get it. Truma is said b'vadei b'meya. In other words, for you to be mevatel the truma, you have to have 101. Don't forget, we had a three-way machloikas. Tanoim. B'meya means that if you had 99 to 1, l'kula alma, it's not bottom. What does it mean? Usfeka b'chamishim. Mamish. It's a statement that you can go out of your mind. So look inside the Rashi Ilyo, because everyone says like a whole toid on this. I don't know, whoever has an art scroll, we're not going to learn it the way it's written in the art scroll. Look inside the Rashi Ilyo. This is a real special day today. Maybe we should have started a few minutes early. So guys, it's in the right column. It's around 7 lines from the bottom. Usfeika b'chamishim. So Pedish Arayvid Zal, in Pedik Yudala, the Hilchas Truma, that what? Halach Eches, that Sfeika ho Amura Kan hu Sha'avda Achas Min Hadimua. Let's go back to the case of Truma Oiseres Bevado B'meya. Okay, so what was the case that we had? not 20 to 1. That was the case we had on Daf Mem Aleph on the base, right? 20 figs and 1 truma. Now we're beginning with a case that you had 99 chulin, right? 1 truma. Then 1 sha'avda achas min demua. Shehu teisha uteisha chulin va'achas truma. Let's go with that. By the way, what difference will it be? Hold on. Now the kiv and sha'avda achas mihen. Once 1 was lost, or 10 or 20, and taka efshe shehi hatruma. Maybe that in that which was lost was the truma. Or it's still in that which remained. And now he's saying like this, guys, you're good. Even though Rabbi Yochanan said it's Chazak Isura, he's adding of an important statement over here. That only if 50 of the original remained, that's how he's teaching. Only if 50 of the original remained, there is where we say that Rabbi Yochanan says that they remain Asur. Sfeikos batal b'roiv, but we already paskined that what? That it was Meduma. You can't change that status. What does it imply when he says that if 50 remain, it's Asur, the 50 that remained? Look inside the Gemara. Hashishim loy, shivim loy. Keep your finger in the Gemara. Let's continue in the Rashirilio. 3 lines from the bottom on the right column. Hoshishim, oishivim nisharu. What happens if loy asurim? What difference does it make how many remained? What Haloy Amar Rabbi Yochanan did not Rabbi Yochanan say afal pisha of the achas? We say kulam nasu hoichiach v'kulam asurim v'loy tivatal hatruma minishat. Afal pishu safik and v'yesham roif chulin. Elim Kain, the only case where we learned on Daf, that was the end of last year, Rabbi Yochanan was only moida that if after 1 fell out, if then more than what you had, so you had 20, then you had 1, then 1 fell out, you're back to 20. If 21 chulin fell in on the top of the left column in the Rashirilio, that is where one of the 2 cases where Rabbi Yochanan was moida that everything is mutter. So what do you mean by 50? So answers to keep your finger in the Rashirilio. We're on the second line on the top of the left and back in the Gemara. That ad chamishim tzricha roiv mikan ve'eloch eino tzricha roiv gavaldik. Look inside the Rashirilio. Umitartzina the hachi ka'amar oisam hadimua shehu meya ovdu mehem ad chamishim. If up to 50 were lost, tzrichim roiv perish hamoisar. V'chol achas hapoirashas misham tzricha shetebatel b'roiv chulim emakem acher tohanasa kulam eicheyach. When Rabbi Yochanan demanded that if what after 1 fell out, if something new fell in, what did we need? We needed more. So in the case we had was you had 20, then you had 1 truma, 21. 1 fell out, you're back to 20. So Rabbi Yochanan says that, when these 20 will be nullified if 21 fall in. Why did he need 21? Because he needed for there to be a new roiv against what you have. When do you need to have that? If from what you had originally, right? If from what you had originally up to 50 fell out. But if from what you had originally, what's the case over here, Aviv? You had 100 total. 99 chulin, 1 truma. If roiv fell out, that's what 51 fell out. 51 fell out. I'm reading inside that Asherilio, like in the case of the 50 barrels, that was this thing that im of the yoser mechamishim shuv hapoireshes mihen einam that which remained, the 49 that remained einam tzrichim roiv chulin mimakem acher. Even Rabbi Yochanan will be moida that which remains is automatically mutter. Why? Because you have a new roiv. The new roiv is in which pile is the truma? It's in the roiv. So 51 fell out. That in itself gives me more halachic logic to say the truma was in the 51. We don't say it's chazak yisur and forever. No, this is a big change. To better appreciate what you were going back on, the 50 and the 100. There is a logic that since roiv fell out, the problem is in the roiv. Amazing. This is gavaldik, huh? Think about this. I want to just read the words inside the Gemara. Ad chamishim, then you need to have new roiv. That was the case we had. 21 fell into the 20. But mekan ve'elach, if from the original mixture that was not nullified, if what fell out was more than 50, 51 or more, now einot tzricham roiv, because you don't need anything, because even Rabbi Yochanan will be moided that the miut that remained now becomes nullified. Now becomes mutter. Based on what? Based on a new svara that the problem, which is the truma here, was in the roiv or is in the roiv. Weiter. Now, this is good. This is good stuff. The next, the three examples.
Rabbi, question. I mean, I can see how that applies to Yovesh. How does that apply to Lach?
There's no Lach over here, B'chlal. There's no Lach in any of the cases of our Mishnah.
But didn't we start with 100 barrels of wine?
No, we're speaking about
150
even barrels. They're not mixed one and the other. They're not mixed one with the other. But let me go with Vlad. Let's go with Vlad first. It's late. Okay, let's go with Lach. Lach means it's better mixed. Okay, Aviv, I'm going to say the same thing in Lach. We have 100 cups. 100 cups. 99 of them are chulin. Cups. 1 cup is truma. And some genius poured the 100 cups in a barrel. So what do you have over here? You have meduma. Why do you have meduma? Because you don't have 100 to 1. Okay. Someone now went ahead and poured out some of the contents of this barrel. Rabbi Yochanan paskin that the remnant of the barrel remains awesome. Now the Gemara is mechadesh. If you left in the barrel, not roiv, 50. If what you left, the moment what you poured out is the majority of the barrel, we have the halachic right to say, even according to Rabbi Yochanan, that the problem isn't that which was poured out. That which remained is good. B'diuk. Okay, now let's go back to the case of the Iguli Develo. We spoke out half of this Gemara because Tamara Fulda spoke it out, but what Tamara Fulda did not speak out in the Mishnah was the other half of this Gemara, and this is a very, very big statement. So, Igule Devela is you have these round cakes of figs, Aviv. Let me give you the case. You had 50 small ones, and you had 25 big ones. That number is foundational. Because let's say a small one is 1 pound and the big one is 2 pounds. Then you have one small truma fell into this. Again, it's a big chiddush of Rabbi Yeshua. What Rabbi Yeshua says is that since in the volume, you have 100 pounds of chulin against 1 pound of truma, even though now the truma is discernible because it's small, you only have 50 small. 50 against 1 is not 100 against 1. Since you are lechatchila allowed to make them into one big guk, so then it's as if you did it already. We spoke out that side. I want to speak out also another side. Let's read it inside. This is Shitas Rabbi Yeshua Amar Rab Chuna. Keina Masnisa Emes. To understand the greatness of the leniency of Rabbi Yeshua is that if you had the Igule Devela, and in the case that I'm saying is that the small one was truma, how do we allow the only 25 big ones? I mean, you don't even have 100 to 1. You have 75 to 1. No, because we don't look at them as a cake. We say, let's view the volume. Let's look at the weight. One big was double the weight than the small. That we already spoke out again. In other words, you do not need to have 50 large. You don't need to have 50 large. The chiddush of Rabbi Yeshua is that you need to have a sum total of 100 in weight against the truma. Now let's go on the opposite. What will be the opposite, my friends? Listen to this. You go out of your mind. You have 50, I'm going with numbers now. You have 50 big ones, 52 pounders. 1 truma 2 pounder. And you have 50 small ones, each one 1 pound. If you were to look at it in volume, You don't have 100 against the 1 in volume. Where do you have the ratio 100 to 1? Only if you look at the numbers. If you look at the numbers, are you kidding me? The truma was big. The truma is not in the little. No, for that we say if you grind it up together, you would not know what's big and what's small. You won't know. But if, by the way, if you grind them up together, if you were to do that, then you would say, then there's no more 100 to 1. There isn't 100 to 1. Yeah, but you didn't grind it up. You have 100 chulin. That's how lenient Rabbi Yeshua is. He's not only using the case that we spoke out in the Maraful and the Mishnah, that the truma was small, and based on, since you could mix them all up together, when you do that, you have 100 to 1, even if the truma was the big. It's kavaldik. Okay.
Rabbi, how much did the truma weight in this case? The 100
The
to
truma
1.
was 2 pounds, and you had another 50 2-pounders of chulin, and you have 50 1-pounders.
Wait,
Even here, Rabbi Yeshua says it's nullified. Now let's go weiter. That means whichever way in it's present, future, and weight and measure. You're using every leniency you could, because up until now it was, since if you would do it, it would become mutter. Then it's as if you did it. Here, grinding it up in actuality won't serve you well, because when you grind it up, once you don't have 100 separate units, you don't have a volume. If truma was 2 pounds, you know what the ratio of 100 to 1 would be? You have to have 200 of. You don't have that. But you have 100 a number. Now let's go weiter. As we already spoke out, again, in the case of the Mishnah, that even on the case of the black and the white, and the round and the square, and the big and the small, Rabbi Yeshua is the lenient. Rabbi Eliezer is the machmer. Nevertheless, says the Mishnah, that in the case where you pressed 1 litra of figs in the mouth of a chavias, Rabbi Eliezer is the one that is lenient by allowing us to look at the sum total volume of the barrels. And when you have the volume of 100 chulin against the 1 P hachavias, you nullify it, and Rabbi Yeshua says you only look at the top of the barrel separately. You don't have another 100 P chavias of chulin, and you got to be machmer. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yechanan Azoi, Tanoin Inun, which means that our version of what Rabbi Yeshua said and what Rabbi Eliezer said is not unanimous. It's that in itself is subject to a machlokes tanoim, as we will see that our Mishnah follows Rabbi Yehuda's tradition of what they said. However, Rabbi Meir had another misoida of what these tanoim said on this case. Daf membeis on beis, and now we're going to quote the whole brayso. I really hope we get far. These are words in the brayso. Now, Namtseiso Omer goes to the case of the black and the white. And if you remember that in our Mishnah we had really 3 opinions. Who was the one that introduced whether you knew what color is the truma or not? Rabbi Akiva. Remember, Rabbi Yeshua doesn't care whether you knew or not. Rabbi Yeshua says malin. Rabbi Eliezer says not malin. And Rabbi Yeshua brought the Yedua. Now let's see. Nemseiso Omer biyadua. If you knew what color was the truma, or what size, or what shape, then loy tale. B'she'eino yedua. If you don't know, then tale. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. Guys, that's not what we learned in the Mishnah. Our Mishnah said these words by Rabbi Akiva. He was just showing you that Rabbi Yeshua was the one that says, at least Rabbi Yeshua, according to Rav Meir's version, in this case, is the same opinion. Divrei Rab Meir. We already see our Mishnah is not quoting Rab Meir's version. Rabbi Yehuda Oimer. Loisale Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. The way we have it in our Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer never made a difference. Never going to be mal. Rabbi Yeshua also yes tale. Even though we had a machlokes amoyroim beshitas, Rabbi Yeshua here in the Braisa clearly he makes no difference. Rabbi Akiva Oimer biyudua loitale b'she'eni yudua talem. So far we see that the Reisha's case of Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Eliezer is in itself subject to a tanoim. Our Mishnah follows Rabbi Yehuda, And the same is in the second case. Litra ketsiois, 1 litra of ketsiois. Just to make it clear, the word ketsia, a mikzoya, was the instrument that would remove the stems and other harder parts of the figs that would not be beneficial when you preserve them. And ketsiois is the name of the figs once they were cleansed, and now they're being pressed into these preserved cakes. So litra ketsiois shedar sal piachavies ein ve'ena yodua. You don't know on top of which barrel you kvetched it in there. Or alpi kaveres. Kaveres literally means a beehive. It doesn't mean a beehive. It means a basket, a barrel, or a basket. Baskets were shaped like beehives, and they're called throughout in many other areas in halacha in Mishnah as well as a kaveres. So Rabbi Eliezer Oimer, im yesham meya litrin means all together volume. This is, by the way, this is the version of our Mishnah. Not only the piachavias, look in all the barrels. Then you got 100 to 1. Only if you don't have a total of 100 litra of chulin against 1 liter of truma, then loisal. Rabbi Yeshua, so he's lenient, right? Because he's allowing the lashon of our Mishnah, tachtoinois will be maladel yonis. Rabbi Yeshua, Oimer, im yeshan meya pumen, only if you have another 100 mouths of the chavias or of now the kaveres, then is there bittul. Vimlav, hapumen remain asur, even though the shulayim, which is the tachtoiniers, which is the inner part of these barrels or baskets, then mutarin, our Mishnah, again, consistent, Divrei Rav Meir. Now, Divrei Rav Yehuda. Now, what does Rav Meir say? Now, here it's not there. Now, listen, Rav Meir brings every Tana up 1 notch l'chumra. What does he say? Rav Meir Oimer, like this. Rabbi Eliezer Oimer. Rabbi Eliezer, according to Rav Meir, says what we have in our Rabbi Yeshua. More machmer, right? You have to have P, chavias, 100 to 1. Im yeshon meya pumim talavim lav, apumim asurim ashlayim mutarim. No, the Braisa's version of Rabbi Eliezer is our Mishnah's version of Rabbi Yeshua. And now Rabbi Yeshua is even more machmed. You know what he says? Rabbi Yeshua Oimer, even if you have 300 different barrels, pumim loitala. Wow, now why would that be? In this case, there's never bittul. Now, why is there never bittul? So this goes back to what we said. We have another minute or two. The Mishnah in Arla, Shitas Rabbi Meir, that holds that it's not only 6 items that are chashav and not batul, but there are many other general stringencies, including es shadar koi limnois or limanois, kol shadar koi limnois. In other words, there's a machlokes Rabbi Yechanan and a Shlakish as exactly what does Rav Meir say. But Rav Meir says that something that's sold by count is chashuv and not batul. The pi hachavius, it must be hada amra muzmin zagin. According to the Braisa's version, which is Rabbi Meir's version, bishitas Rabbi Yeshua, that pumin oisem kedavar shedarkoi limanois. Davar shedarkoi limanois. When people were to sell figs, the top layer of these barrels were generally sold by the litra. It was a layer, the top layer of the chavias. That's how they would sell them. And since they are sold by number, muzmin zagan, the only way to explain Rabbi Yeshua that he subscribes to the sheet of Rabbi Meir, that also oisam kodam shalak leimanis. And now, before we come back, hado Messiah. Now you understand the words of Rabbi Yechanan. Du Amar, that says tanoyin inun, that our Mishnah's record of Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Eliezer, and how they reverse opinions in the case of the black and the white, and in the case of the piachavias, that's subject to machlokes tanoim. Because now we found this brisa, and there we see that Rabbi Meir has a whole different version, both in the Reisha and in the Seifa. Now let's go weiter. Hadam Messiah Lamanda Omar. Divrei Rav Meir kol hadvarim mikachim. This is very important. That this You are explaining the sheet of Rabbi Yeshua because he holds like Rav Meir and Orla. It's not only 6 items that are chashuv. No, it's more than that. Things that are sold by number. But we know that there's a machlokes Rabbi Yechanan and a Shlakish. Bishitas Rav Meir. Is it es shedar koi limnois? Is it kol shedar koi limnois? Es shedar koi limnois means only. When is it chashuv? If it's only sold by number. Something that's commonly sold by number, that's called kol shedarkoi, but it's not exclusively sold by number, it's not chashuv enough. The top of the barrels are not exclusively sold by number. Sometimes you sell the barrel. Sometimes you sell 20, not even a barrel. You sell volume. It's not always sold as an individualized item, like eggs, sold by the dozen. Sometimes you sell them by the box, sell them by the pile. So the fact that we are explaining Rabbi Yeshua, Keshitas Rav Meir is a raya, Laman the Omar, that the words of Rav Meir is not es shedar koi limnois, but it's what we say in the Bavli, kol shedar koi limnois, or how he says it in the Yerushalmi, kol hadvarim mikachim, kol hadvarim. Anything that's commonly sold, mikadosh here means that the problem will make everything else problematic because it won't be nullified. We will skip the next 6 words and we're going to conclude Hada Amra Lamay Nafkamina. If it's Eshadar Kelimnois, Kol Shadar Kelimnois, the example that they give is a delas, a gourd. Delas Yavanis is one of the 6 items that the Chachamim say is not bottled. Delas Yavanis. That's a special gourd. Stama gourd is not so chashiv. Aber gourds are generally sold by number. At times, they're sold in volume. They're sold in a box, in a pile. That means, Hada Amra, L'shitas Rav Meir, the las, afilu echad mimeya ba'oiser. And that's the beauty, all coming back the way the Rebbe says that all of these stringencies that the Chachamim gave was actually a empowerment for Jews in Golus not to become nullified. Because we went into Golus. And if, in other words, it's so we're chashuv, so we're not batal. And then we have, and what happens if you're not chashuv? We're counted. What about the Jew that's not counted? Doesn't matter. Generally, we're counted. Generally, we count. Even if, God forbid, at times what we're doing is not worthy to be counted. Oichet gut.